President-elect Donald Trump promising to close the border and begin mass deportations of people who came into this country illegally or overstayed their welcome. Immigration attorney Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch has her offices in Austin, Texas, and Kate is also the co-host of the Law Moms Out Loud podcast. Now, Kate, there's got to be a lot of anxiety. Do you have people with immigration issues, I guess, flooding your office right now?
We've gotten a lot of calls, and what we're noticing is that the people who are calling are all levels of immigration, from naturalized U.S. citizens to people who have green cards to people who have work permits, and then, of course, people who are undocumented. But really, all immigrants are worried right now about what this means for them.
And I know there are slogans and T-shirts and bumper stickers, get rid of them, deport them. Look, these cases on an individual basis can be very complicated.
Absolutely. Immigration is a very complex area of the law. It's been compared to the tax code. And so whether someone is in lawful status or legal status, or what their status is, or even who has jurisdiction over what their status is a complex question in many cases, which means that these ideas of having, local police officers, law enforcement agents, all of a sudden enforcing immigration laws will result in chaos and people who shouldn't be deported or detained suffering deportation and detention.
Well, and then you add politics into the mix, right? Which is the worst ingredient I think you could add here when we need just some objective truths.
Yeah, I mean, this has been such a powerful issue for Republican candidates and for Trump, for them to talk about immigration as if it means danger. It's really motivated a lot of people to be afraid and to vote. And here we are, and we're entering into an era where Trump has made promises to detain and apprehend and deport millions of people in the U.S. And the fallout of that from a humanitarian perspective is going to be really, really heartbreaking to see, like the family separations that we saw along the border in Trump 1.0. We're going to start to see in the interior of the United States with families that have mixed status and kids born in the U.S. We're going to start to see family separations like that, but with people already living in the U.S. And then also the economic fallout of policies like these are going to create a ripple effect that's going to impact a lot of people, not just people who directly employ immigrants and who love immigrants, but the rest of us, because the economic fallout of this will be massive.
Well, and we're getting almost mixed messages. The president-elect has sounded a bit more reasoned in his tone, saying he wants to work on something for programs like the Dreamers and that kind of a thing. But then many of the people he's bringing into his administration seem to have much more extreme views and want to take much more radical action. So it must be confusing.
It doesn't feel very confusing to me. It feels pretty clear that they have pretty clearly stated all throughout the campaign what their intentions are. Project 2025 is really clear. We all know what Stephen Miller is going to do. We all know what Tom Homan has said about he doesn't care if U.S. citizen children get deported with their families. And so I think my expectation, and not a hopeful expectation, but my fear, is that really the first day in office or the second day in office, we're going to see a massive rollout of policies that are revoking statuses and protections, things that say, immigrants are safe in churches and hospitals and schools, and dreamers are safe, and all of these protections that, we've become accustomed to are going to immediately be pulled away. And then we're also going to see massive enforcement actions where we'll see worksite raids and people picked up, being pulled over at the supermarket. I think it's much wiser for immigrants and people who employ immigrants and people who, love them to consider what's going to happen and to make an emergency plan now so that if the worst does occur, we're not scrambling in a time of an emergency because we might lose critical hours or days or weeks.
Well, then what is that kind of emergency plan?
Well, so an immigrant family, let's say we've got a mom or a dad and they're undocumented and they've got kids here in the United States. The entire family needs to get together. If the kids are old enough to understand what's going on, they all need to understand what is our plan. If mom and dad are undocumented, they get pulled over and the kids are in the back of the car, who is going to come and pick them up? Is it going to be Aunt Sarah? Does she have legal status? Does she have authorization to pick up these kids and to care for the kids? Do we all know where our critical documents are? Do we have valid unexpired passports? Do we know what the plan is going to be if dad gets deported? Where are we going to live? And are we all on the same page about that? Have we consulted with an immigration lawyer, and do we know what our options are? And then do we know what our rights are in interactions with law enforcement? Like, do the kids know that they don't have to open the door if immigration's knocking and they don't have a search warrant? These are all things that families need to be thinking about and planning for now. And there's lots of community resources and nonprofits gearing up to help provide these services to immigrants. And similarly, for people who employ immigrants, it's the same question. Does this company have a plan? Have we thought through who our employees are who need protection? What's going to happen if we get an I-9 audit or a raid? If immigration shows up at our company, are they allowed in? Who's the person that's going to interact with them? So these are things that we want to be thinking about now, because again, if we don't think about it now and then we're responding in the moment of an emergency, we make poor decisions, we turn over information we don't have to turn over, or someone gets deported because we haven't planned ahead. And it's hard stuff to think about, but it's really, really necessary.
Well, there is a large portion of this country, however, that says, look, we saw millions of people coming across the border without really much of a verification system at all. We don't know who they are. And they were in by 10, 13 million by some estimates. And that was unsustainable. And the government has to take some sort of an action to establish a credible border.
I think it's untrue that we had, massive people flooding who aren't registered with the system. The people who made it, the border hasn't been porous for a long time. There's very strong enforcement at the border. It is true that because we have failed to pass immigration reform in a way that reflects the needs of our economy, it has created this group of people who live and work and support the economy of the United States, but they're not, in the system. They live in the shadows. And if we really wanted to do something about that, which I think makes sense, in a way that actually supports this country and supports the economy and supports everybody who's living here, we would create a system where people can come out of the shadows, maybe pay a fine, register, give, tell us everything about them and apologize for having been undocumented. And then they get work permission, and then, tax problems are solved, and we have less people living here without us knowing about it. I mean, there are ways to do this smartly that support everyone. And what I can say is that, even if you're not humanitarian minded, you're just enforcement minded, it still is not economically sound to spend billions of dollars rounding up and detaining and deporting people who are here working, who are mostly very good, hardworking people who have no criminal record, and, cutting off our nose to spite our face as a nation. It's an absurd action that's going to have economic fallout. Everybody's going to be sorry about it if it's actually implemented and followed all the way through. And I wish that we would be much smarter as a nation and say, you know what? Our baby boomers are aging. We need people to care for them. We need more innovators. We need more engineers. We need more immigrants to support the needs of this economy. So why don't we stop talking about immigrants as if they are bad? People who come here, who start over, who look for a better life, they're impressive. They're ambitious. They deserve our respect, and we need them in this country. And so let's create a way for immigrants to actually come here, not have to break the law to get a job in this country. And then we're all better for it.
A lot of debate on the matter of immigration lies ahead in 2025. Kate Lincoln-Goldfinch is an immigration attorney working just that issue in Austin, Texas, giving us some of her insights into this problem. Kate, thank you so much for your time and your views here.